Hi, good evening. Hello and welcome to this ADI discussion. Our theme for today is the resurgence of crafts and industry. ADI would like to thank Anantaya Jaipur for making this online event possible. Thank you, Anantaya. The discussion will last about 45 minutes, will be followed by a Q&A. Some of you have already sent in your questions to the registration form. And those of you who haven't done that, you have the Q&A function on your Zoom screens. You can send us your question, tell us which panelist you would like to answer your question, and I'll direct your questions. A quick note, we receive hundreds of questions on every Zoom webinar we do. We have limited time for Q&A, so we can tackle about 10 to 15 questions at best. Don't worry, we'll try and find another format where we can answer all your questions next time around. The discussion will last 45 minutes. We're going to have a Q&A after that. Members of the audience, we have about 450. We're expecting a full house today. Thank you for being with us here today. I'm going to be asking you to participate as well and give us your opinions through our polling mechanism. Let me start by introducing our panelists. Padma Shri Leila Taibji is the founder of Dastakar. Leila, welcome to the show. Neelam Chibbar is the co-founder of Industry Crafts Foundation. Neelam, welcome. Devika Krishnan is a craft space design and business developer. Welcome, Devika. Dr. Tulika Gupta is the director of the Indian Institute of Crafts and Design. And Christine Rai is the founder of Indian Ink. Now, to start with, let me invite Darpana Atale, member of the National Executive Committee of ADI, to say hello. Darpana, over to you.
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another session of Resurgence series, which is organized by ADI. Craft and design have always been interlinked in so many ways, and ADI has always been in the forefront in promoting these good practices, whether it's through workshops, conferences, or webinars like the one we had last Friday. So I'm really happy to see friends and colleagues who are role models in the craft sector. And it's a great pleasure to have all of you here today. A quick announcement. ADI has initiated the National Design Survey. It's to help understand how businesses and design firms have been affected by COVID-19. So please go to adi.org.in and fill the survey. It'll help all of us. Over to you, Suresh. Thank you.
Thank you, Darpana. Leila, first question to you. Give us an overview. How has the craft sector been doing in the last 10 years, well before COVID?
There's sort of two parallel paths. One is positive and one is negative. So let's get the negative one over first, because that's a much bigger scenario. This is not the first time that craftspeople have been in deep crisis in the last 10 years. They had a massive blow from demonetization, which almost knocked the whole sector completely out of sync for many months. They staggered back only, I think, 18 months later to be slapped with GST, which in itself was not a bad thing, but was so wrongly implemented and which didn't take into consideration at all the way that craftspeople work, that small craft entrepreneurships work. And so that was really terrible. And then, of course, we had the lockdown in Kashmir for 5 months, which was really a kind of mini thing of what is going on in a macro sense all over India today, where people were simply not able to work. They didn't have finance, they didn't have buyers, they didn't have bazaars and markets. And now we have this, which also has no visible end in sight, because even if the lockout is relaxed, it does mean it is going to take a very long time for people to stagger back, and the markets are going to be very different. Now, I did say that there was a parallel positive trend in the last 10 years, which is that crafts all over the world have suddenly found a market again and an appreciation after a long time of the international market being dominated by brands, global brands, and by handmade being considered a rather sort of primitive, rather niche kind of activity. I think all over the world, particularly in the West, there's a recognition that it's actually a very good thing. And it resonates with all the kind of concerns we have about the environment, about consumerism, about all these kind of things. But unfortunately, these two paths don't really meet. And if people, not just the public and the consumers and the media, but the government itself, realize that actually India has a gold mine sitting here of these millions of craftspeople who could take center stage in this new global marketplace, it would be wonderful. But it needs a lot of investment, not just of finance, but also of R&D, of design, of product development, of finding different types of marketing platforms. So we are at this scenario today. Of course, the immediate problem is that there are no markets and there's no money and there's no sense of direction. But it is also an opportunity, I suppose, to rethink.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not wholly pessimistic, but nothing is going to happen unless we really think about all this, the craft sector, in a very new way.
All right. That's a good point to bring Neelam into the discussion. Neelam, your company uses the word creative manufacturing instead of craft. Why do you use that term?
Yeah. So purely because there is so much of width and depth in this sector. It is a phenomenally wide spectrum, and it cannot be encompassed by one term. And it was very clear to me that for me, and each person interprets this sector in their own way. It's phenomenal to see the uprising. I mean, look at the amount of attendance you have for this session. Yeah, look at. So there is a huge inner attachment that almost every Indian has to this sector. That is undeniable. Okay. So in this multitude, diversity of everything, each one of us has to work where we feel the maximum for. Yeah. Because like Leila has also shared, there is very little support you get from the larger ecosystem. So you've got to be driven by your personal passion. So I started my career working with artisans in Bastar, very poor dhokra artisans. And one very wise NID person told me, choose a craft that you can work in with your own hands. So I worked with them with my own hands, and I lived with them, and I saw that dirt poverty, but enormous richness. Lost wax metal casting is one of the world's most complex forms of casting and the most ancient. It's like a science, but passed down culturally. So it's got every possible angle to it. I'm not going to get into it. What I learned from those 2-3 years was that primarily, crafts was a form of livelihood. So I've stuck to that. Yeah. So after that, next 30 years, I've said, to me, it's about livelihoods. Okay. It's about income generation. Everything else comes secondary. I have to put my passions aside of the whole cultural context, of the whole everything context, because all that is very valid. It's all very valid, but I am going to focus on crafts as livelihoods. And therefore, we call it creative manufacturing.
All right.
Because we believe that unless, and also for me, it was livelihoods of the masses. It was not about livelihoods about a few master artisans, because to me, it was livelihoods and inclusive growth. That how do these people sitting in villages, I mean, the numbers are out there. We were the world's second largest economy pre-industrial revolution on the backs of these people. This was the factory of the world, right? We all know that, right? So how are we going to come up with a solution for the many, right? So for me, it had to become creative manufacturing. It had to become making them into SMEs, but keeping just 2 tenets of the original. One was ownership. Crafts was always an owned business. Craftsmen owned it. They were never employees. So we build cooperative. We build producer collectives. So we can have 2,000 women in a collective. We can have 500 women in a collective. So that's the path we took. And we've taken the path of handmade, but slightly more, you could call it commodity manufacturing. That's fine.
Got it. Neelam, one of the things Gandhi said was mass production means production by the masses, not production just for the masses. On that note, Devika, you work with crafts communities in Kashmir and Rajasthan and various parts of India. Give us a sense of how the lockdown has affected them. I know how it's affected all of us privileged people sitting in urban suburbs. We are finding it hard to get a chicken liver pate and all that. How is it really affecting the people in the crafts communities?
So at first, when it happened, there was panic. I think for the first week, all the phone calls, all the chats, all the videos were about what are we going to do? Where is it going to end? Are we going to die? I mean, there was absolute panic, one about the virus and two about what is going to happen about our future. And I think it's also because systems weren't in place. You know, it was like suddenly the world just vanished beneath your feet. But then the state government started to pull in, you know, agencies started to pull in. We started to restructure what we were doing. So I can actually take you through maybe 3 examples of 3 different geographies. So if we look at Yamignur, where I'm working now with weavers, these are coarse count weavers who do 60s and 80s count cotton, largely 60s count. They make sheets and lungis and towels and that sort of stuff. There are 3,700 weaver families in Yamignur and close to 10,000 looms. And my task is actually, I would take Neelam's term of livelihood and stretch it a little further and say crafts is a way of life.
Mm-hmm.
So you farm, and when you're not farming, you craft. So it's living. If I don't craft, I don't live. So in Yamignur, what we did was we had just commenced on the training. We were actually, the weavers themselves said they wanted to be upskilled. They wanted to know the science behind their looms. They wanted to know the science behind cotton, which is grown there. So we had worked this entire 6-month curriculum up, and we were to commence the whole thing on the 26th of March, a day after Ugadi, which is our new year.
Mm-hmm.
And well, guess what happened? So it took us for 2 or 3 days to sort things out. And we quickly converted our training into lesson plans. And we actually created texts. So now we have chapters on natural fiber, on types of looms, on types of weaves, on types of yarns, on what a dobby is, how do you set your own dobby, how do you repair things, so all of this was done in English. And thankfully, the weavers' children go to colleges. So they translated all of that into Telugu. And we have these little textbooks. And it's great because we're getting feedback from them. And what we're also doing is just making plain Kora cotton fabric. So we are ensuring there's bare minimum engagement going on, that we have not shut our looms down, but we are not making fancy saris and stuff like that. In Kashmir, if I go to my second geography, nothing's changed there since August 5th. We've been in lockdown since then. In fact, everyone's happy out there because at least now there's internet and there's cell phones, even if it's not 4G, it's just 2G. In Ranthambore, 80% of our turnover depends on local sales from tourists. So we're in a fix now. We are in a fix now. We don't know. So the women there are telling me if there is any hope in the horizon, if there is any promise that they can work towards, they'd be happy. So these are 3 different scenarios. Yeah.
We have a full house, over 500 participants. It's time to ask our audience a question. Anshu, if we can have poll question number 1. We have questions that we're going to poll the audience to get a sense of the house. The first question, if we can have on screen, the question is, when was the last time you bought a piece of Indian craft? You have 4 options. Very recently, a week before the lockdown started, a few months, a few years, and it's so far back that you can't remember. You have 20 seconds to vote. We'll have the results shortly. There you go. So not too bad. It's been a few months, 52%, and a week before the lockdown started is 35%. And a very small number say it's been a few years or can't remember. Anshu, if we can close the poll. So we have a very craft-friendly audience here today, are all engaged in the buying of craft. Tulika, in your view, what has been the most successful designer-craftsperson collaboration that you have seen, say, in the last decade?
Thank you, Suresh. It's very difficult to say which is the most successful. Now, I think most of the Indian designers are working with craftspeople. There's hardly any designer that does not engage craftspeople in any which form, in any which way. So I think it's commendable that we have a lot of websites now which have come up, and specifically I would like to give examples of like iTokery. They are directly there's no designer in between. They directly source from the craftspeople, and it's there for people to buy. And when they send it home, it comes very beautifully wrapped in a very handcrafted package with a little note that is given to you. So apart from the bazaars that happen regularly, which is very important, in situations like these, I think it's very, very important that more and more visibility or transparency comes to the fore, where we can use technology completely. Okay. And like I said, naming one designer is very difficult. All the designers are working with craftspeople, and all of them are wonderful collaborations. It has to also result in sales. That is where you could have wonderful products, but then if you do not advertise enough, or if you do not sell enough, that is also an issue, because ultimately it's about livelihoods, as Neelamji said, or Leelaji said, and also Devika mentioned. It's all about livelihoods, and that is what here at IICD also, we continuously strive for that, that whoever comes here for education, whether it's a craftsperson or anybody else, they should be able to sell their products. They should be able to create and sell their products. And I think that is really very important, because I've not worked as a business person, but I've worked as a faculty and always in education for a very long time. And here what I see is a lot of the times designers become very romantic, and they have a lot of wonderful view about things that they can make. And then it all falls flat when they're not able to do basic things like costing and selling it properly. So all the young designers I'm talking about, whom I've seen grow over the years. And so that I think is also very important for designers to keep that in mind and to discover new markets. And I think technology really helped it. And going further, even including things where we can trace where everything has come from, will be very important, because we see a lot of fake products in the market. And, I'm sorry to say, but they have designer labels, but the products are fake sometimes. It's not genuine craft work at all.
I've seen. The thing that really gets my goat is when I see printed ikat. I want to slap the designer when they print ikat patterns onto fabric. That's my personal...
It's really sad. It's really sad. So I think we can use technology right now. There's this new technology, blockchain, that is coming up. I think that we can really use wonderfully for these kind of things.
All right. Yeah. Speaking of new markets and costing, Christine, you've been buying Indian crafts for a long time on behalf of foreign buyers, on behalf of companies outside of India, because Indian crafts have a market outside India as well. Which forms of Indian craft are top of mind when it comes to foreign retailers or foreign buyers, for instance?
Thank you, Suresh. It's a great honor, actually, and privilege to be here. I just wanted to add that I am also representing the entire buying agents fraternity, in that I represent the Buying Agents Association, which is a very new body. We just got formed about 4 years ago, but surprisingly, COVID-19, it's in times of crisis that you come together more. So we're on talks both with ourselves, our members, as well as with the industry at the moment, and getting a lot of great information. So I'm superbly honored to be here. I'm in such good company. I mean, I know Laila, we're Delhi party girls, so it's fabulous.
I beg your pardon.
Delhi party girls, Laila.
But I have met Neelam in a strictly work context. I don't know Devika at all, but I'd love to get to know her. And I have actually got Tulika on my list of people to get to know, because I've heard about her institute outside Jaipur, and it sounds wonderful. So to get to the question, Yes, Indian craft, it's, you know, it's widely known, it's widely appreciated. I would say the top forms that are you know, that international buyers really understand are block printing, and I would call screen printing a craft as well. I know, you know, ikat, you probably want to slap me because we're the people that say, well, if you can't afford real ikat and you want that look, you can screen print it, but don't call it ikat. It's a pretty print on a screen. And so I deserve to get slapped, but our job is to actually be that person in the middle that says, you want that look, you can still make it in India, don't go and make it in China, but let's do a screen print. And you know, so that is unfortunately one of the things we do. Khadi and handloom weaving, I think weaves have a huge role to play, whether it's scarves, whether it's in apparel, whether it's in just curtains or other types of home furnishings. Embroidery, we still see a lot of hand embroidery on in fashion again, apparel, a huge amount, and on fashion accessories. Probably a little too expensive hand embroidery to put onto cushion covers and things. That tends to be machine embroidery now. Wood carving is one of our, I mean, I would say one of India's hugest, and it's all hand carved still. And metal, you know, metal crafts. In the hard lines category, sheet metal, you know, with all the textures, the hand hammering, all the work that is done on them, as well as sand casting and forging. So that's those are in the top 10. And probably in the textile side, kanta work is still going strong. I think the Western consumer, the foreign consumer, I shouldn't say West because we have east of here, Japan and Australia. On the bottom side, you asked that question, I would say probably the Kashmiri embroidery, things like namdas are not really understood, although I love them. And I actually made a customer buy some namdas once. And it was quite interesting. They changed the color. So we did dark navy namdas with sort of a lighter blue, and they were quite pretty, but I don't think they sold very well. The customer didn't quite get it. Bidri work, which is one of my personal favorites, is a non-starter. It's too expensive. It's just too expensive. But and there was a company in Bangalore several years ago that did the most beautiful. I mean, the creative design came from Bangalore. A guy called Vicky Sardesai, and he did a whole Bidri collection with totally modern, you know, beautiful. I think it was a cherry blossom design or something, and it was absolutely exquisite. Chicken curry and tilla work, totally, you know, too expensive almost. Chicken curry is too beautiful, but when we convert it to a Western price point, it doesn't really, people like it, but it doesn't really hold its own. So I think, you know, working with the foreign client, the price relationship is really, really important. You know, you've got to know your market. You've got to know, you know, what the price points are. And I think, but you can still buy crafts. I mean, there's still, you know, I know for many of you purists, Muradabad is not necessarily handicraft, but that's where we see the handcraft almost moving in a more industrial way. But I've seen, I mean, we had a huge program, if I can just share briefly, of a hand hammered copper tankard, you know, thousands and thousands of pieces. And we got the program in India, and production was going a bit slow, and the customer said, well, we can get it made in China, but they will machine hammer it. And I can't tell you how horrible it looked, like a golf ball, you know, with really little sort of mechanized things. And we managed to save the order. We still shipped it from India, and it was all hand hammered. So I felt very proud of that. You know, I think what's happening now, though, is that the foreign customer, I mean, I'm seeing quotes, and I'm seeing people really wanting to look more at, you know, at handcraft. There's you know, the markets that's still alive and is probably going to grow manyfold over the next few months is e-commerce. And what better space to tell the handcraft story than on a website, you know, because it's not in a store. My customers say it's too hard, we can't do the signage, we can't do this. You have a little tag on the product to tell the story. So I see e-commerce being a great vehicle for us to tell the craft story. And you know, I think it will go hand in hand in this new world. You know, and people, you know, post COVID-19, I'm already seeing it. We're seeing people actively wanting to move away from China, mass production. You know, due to the tariffs, as much business that could go to Vietnam has already gone. Vietnam's now full. They don't have capacity for anything. So India is going to emerge. And I think that our craft heritage can continue. I think our craft skills can continue. And I think in home decor as well, it's already happening. There's a lot of talk about people saying, you know, how people are wanting to eat together more, they're cooking together. You know, India does beautiful tableware, not so much in ceramics, although that is starting to grow, but, you know, just wooden chopping boards, wooden blocks to serve your cheese, including the cutlery. And I wanted to just end my remarks with a quote from quite a famous a lady. She's in sort of trend forecaster called Lee Edelcourt. I don't know how many of you are familiar with her. And she just recently said, "We will start up again with new rules and regulations, allowing countries to get back to their know-how and specific qualities, introducing cottage industries that would flourish and grow into an arts and crafts century where manual labor is cherished above everything else." So I think there's hope. I mean, I really believe there is great hope.
Bravo. All right, time for our second audience poll. Anshu, if we can fire the second poll. You'll see the question shortly. Right, in your view, are Indian designers engaging enough with the craft sector? You have 4 options. Yes, plenty of great examples. Yes, but they could be doing a lot more. Option 3, no, not nearly enough. And option 4, you just don't know. You don't know, can't say. You have 20 seconds to vote again. Vote away.
Such a pity that we can't vote.
Panelists can't vote because you're in the know. You have vested interest in the answer.
We wouldn't be content with just ticking a box, I can tell you.
Let's give it a few more seconds for people to vote. I'm happy to report we still have a full house, 500 plus people voting and listening in. All right, the overwhelming response is that yes, but they could be doing a lot more. And 26%, a quarter of the audience says no, not nearly enough. All right, we can close the poll. Neelam, apart from working with craftspeople and improving the quality of craft and manufacturing, you're also attempting to create a new business model, what you call a kind of form of capitalism, more inclusive form of capitalism. Tell us about that creation of a new business model.
Well, it's very clear that what Devika said, that farm and off farm, right? So if you look at why the government has never taken this sector seriously, I finally analyzed it, is because we never linked it enough to farm.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, there's a lobby for farmers.
Mm-hmm.
You look at USAID, you look at Gates Foundation, you look at all the large donor agencies. They have a section for farmer, agri. But there is nothing for artisanal production.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of work that needs to go on how we tell the story and how so the first thing, not the first thing, it's taken us 26 years. So I have started we first started calling it creative manufacturing, and now we call it off-farm. So farm, okay. Off-farm. So NABARD, for example, has been told that they need to support the formation of 2,000 non-farm producer companies. Yeah, but I don't like the word non-farm, because see, the Indian government strategy on farm and on inclusive growth in farm is producer companies. So we have 7,000 agri producer companies. We have small farmers agri consortium, which supports the building of farm producer companies. Off farm producer companies, silence, nothing. So NABARD said, okay, we will support 2,000 non-farm producer companies. I don't know how much headway they've made, but basically look at Amul. Amul is value addition. The milkman owns the company that makes the cheese and the gourmet chocolates and the gourmet yogurt. Mm-hmm. The milkman owns it, right? Mm-hmm. So we got to do the same thing for inclusive growth. Yeah. Look, read Verghese Kurian, everyone. Verghese Kurian has got this wonderful quotation which says that with professional management, we can transform the lives of our farmers. So I say with professional management, we can transform the lives of our artisanal producers, right? Okay. Just do a quick matchup between farm, off farm, and you will come up with a plethora of solutions. The government may even listen to you a little more seriously. But I think essentially it's all about a kinder economy is that artisans get value only if they make the end product. Okay, I'll just make it less abstract. Let's take cotton. Why are our cotton farmers committing suicide? Why? So if the cotton farmer could own the brand that made the cotton shirt, it's as simple as that. So Amul is owned by 3 million milkmen. So we've got to look at this at scale. And the only thing I've learned from the whole Verghese Kurian experience is that whatever he did 60 years ago happened because of certain circumstances. I believe what will happen in our sector is, I can see it happening already. It's thanks to this thing called COVID. So I don't think we can do what he did and the way he did it 60 years ago. I think today it will be about networking. It'll be about collaboration. It'll be about technology. Today we have something called technology, which can super assist collaborative thought and network building. We'll not be able to do it the way it was done then, but there are new ways to do it. And there is a new way to build a kinder, inclusive economy that's owned by the base producers. Cotton farmers should own the brands, and the weavers must own the brands. The spinners must own the brands. Exactly what Gandhi said, right? Today, we have the word brand. And how are you going to make these inclusive supply chains? And you can make them across materials. You don't have to worry. Yeah. I mean, for years, people told me it's impossible to do an Amul in this sector because Amul is just one raw material. It's a commodity product. So what? So today we are talking about a platform for inclusive entrepreneurship, PI. It's a societal platform. Societal platform is a thought which has emerged from Ekstep and Nilekani philanthropies. That today we need to build platforms that are owned by society, not Ubers and Olas that are owned by private investors. So there are new ways of doing these things. These are all collaborative platforms. And I'm deeply, deeply, deeply impressed by this huge force of energy that's entering the sector where people are keen to collaborate now, caused by this pressure. Yeah. And you can do sale of low-end products, sale of high-end products, everything on these platforms.
All right. Devika, give us a sense of what a design intervention into a craft sector, commitment to Kashmir being an example, what does it do for the community? We know what it does for the design of the craft itself because that's visible to us. Tell us what it does to families, what it does to children, what it does to people who live in the community.
So you want for C2K specifically or
no.
in
C2K
general?
like community, using
Okay.
C2K as an
Okay.
example.
So any intervention that happens where we are talking about like Neelam said, enhancing livelihoods, enhancing incomes. If I take the example of say Ranthambore, the Dastakar Ranthambore is a hugely successful crafts project, crafts enterprise, which is primarily primarily made for generating livelihoods to people who were affected by the formation of the Tiger Reserve in the 80s. People were displaced and from inside the core zone to outside. And when it became no man's land, like nobody could enter the forest, people who lived in the villages outside couldn't enter either. Crafts was just a means to an end. The larger purpose was to actually give these people something to do because they'd lost their old way of life. If I look at, so it's been hugely transformational. I'm seeing now the third generation. So for the first generation, who Laila started working with in '89, they were not literate. They were very young mothers who were married at a very young age and had their children before they were 20. They had 5 or 6 children. Their daughters then got till 8th grade. And now the granddaughters are working elsewhere because they're all nurses and teachers and MBAs and what have you. A project like this in a geography where female feticide is really rife, it's a huge difference it's done to women. It's a huge difference it's done to livelihoods, to people who lost their old way of life. So it's It's not the product so much as the purpose that has been solved in this. If we look at C2K now, C2K to me, C2K is commitment to Kashmir. C2K to me has like thrown the ball. I mean, it's a game changer in an initiative, because till date, till I took on the task at C2K, all the projects that I dealt with had a pool of beneficiaries who we worked with. We worked within their skills. We gave them design training, business training, set up their enterprise, or ramped up their enterprise. So if there were 50 people that we were addressing, they formed the enterprise. But in C2K, the scale is something else. With the same amount of funding that they got for setting up a 50 people enterprise, we actually ended up training and helping set up 27 different enterprises. We worked across 11 crafts. So it wasn't like we had this bunch of people who we worked with and we, linked markets and we had these 27 people who who generated employment for 10 to 100 people each. So the reach is much more. But the greater beauty of the C2K project is that C2K brought hope and purpose to a land and a community that was completely sunk in uncertainty and conflict for 3 decades. Most of the people who we worked with over there are, in their 20s and mid-30s. They were born into this conflict. This is not a fight of their own. Mm-hmm. They were born into something that they don't want to be a part of. How do we address that? They've all had an education. They all want to get ahead. They are the millennium lot. They have their gadgets. They are hooked, they're linked to the net, and they want to get ahead. And C2K has actually addressed that need.
Okay.
And I think even with the breaks that August 5th provided, put on us, mm-hmm. we still have managed to sort of move ahead. Mm-hmm. And it was just the perfect synergy of designers, of the core team, of the funder. Srishti stepped in and provided business management training to some of the artisans. It's been a lovely, lovely collaboration.
Leila, you've been working with the craft sector for 38 years now, according to your website, nearly 4 decades.
38 years of Daskar, but another 5 before that.
Okay, well over 4 decades. How important is government policy when it comes to this sector? Is it make or break?
It is very important if you're looking at the macro picture, because the numbers are so huge. And though I agree with Neelam that, there are solutions, there are collaborations, there are sort of shared platforms, my own experience is also that each community is very different. When you enter it, it has a different set of needs. It has different sets of skill sets. It needs different sort of steps. And I think there needs to be a pool of available investment, both of people and of money, who are going to go and work in these sectors. And I don't think it can be left absolutely to chance, whether it is a designer or whether it's an NGO, mm-hmm. because we do tend to, unless there's an absolute need and someone comes to Daskar and says, will you work in Kashmir or will you work in Ranthambore? Designers or entrepreneurs do tend to choose the softer options of, say, textile crafts and things. And there are many, many crafts and many communities who have a huge potential and a huge need as well, who just aren't addressed. Mm-hmm. So there have to be some macro schemes, there have to be some pools, but unfortunately the government funding has remained absolutely the same in the last 40 years, and they're so sort of strung with red tape, mm-hmm. they're so complicated, they don't reach out to people, and it's very difficult to access them. So whenever we ask the government for funding for anything, we are usually told that not even 25% of the funds available for craft are utilized. Mm-hmm. But it's not utilized because no one wants that money, but because it's so complex to get hold of it.
Christine, when international buyers source from India, are they looking at India as a production base, a factory, or are they looking for Indian design as well? Sorry, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Sorry, Suresh. It's really a bit of both, I would say. It's not one or the other. There's a lot of people come to India because we can produce quite a lot, believe it or not. I mean, our handicraft exports that go out, which covers some textiles, and it's about $3.8 billion. Dollars, and that doesn't include carpets. Carpets another $1.5 billion. So, you know, we can produce, but I think intrinsically people do come to India with some awareness of the handcraft writing, but it does depend on the brand. People, I would say, very few people nowadays buying very ethnic-looking products. I think it is important that there is an element of modern look or clean design, the right colors to fit into that country's home. I mean, people love the block printing and the wood carving, as I said, but they don't want the traditional necessarily. But, you know, I think there's nothing wrong with contemporizing design. And, you know, there are a couple of examples in the US market. There's a man called John Robshaw who works extensively in India and has done, and he's not just block printing anymore. In order to do mass production, he has taken his designs onto screen, but he still I think it was, I think Neelam mentioned telling the story is really important. And I think he tells the story. And then there's another small brand called Roller Rabbit based out of US East Coast. And she does the same thing. So whether the design is Indian or whether the design comes from abroad, it's quite an interesting blend. And I find there's a lot of good collaboration there. You know, some of the clients, the brands have in-house designers. Sometimes they just put concepts together and they expect the Indian exporters to interpret it. And that's really, there's a lot of design, as we know, in India. So you know, it's a question of marrying the two. And a lot depends on the relationship between the buyer or the designer who's buying from India, the factory or the exporter. Or craft producer, and then in sort of the buying agent role is quite in the middle there to try and make sure that it all works and we get the best out of it. We've seen quite a lot of Indian designers, you know, Ayush, who we were talking about earlier, Mukul Goyal, selling their own products internationally. I mean, there's a lot of that happening. But we also have quite a lot of Western designers. Michael Arum is one who came to India as a graduate from design school and set up his metal studio in India. I mean, he didn't really have an Indian connection, but he loved the handcraft. He just based himself here, and he's now quite a big international brand. Now, is he Indian? Is he American? You know, he's really quite a bit of both. It's hard to say. So, you know, there's plenty of people who come to India and just say, okay, well, we can buy, you know, X million out of India. But by and large, you don't come to India for mass produce. You come for India for something a bit more interesting. And I didn't.
You wanted to weigh in on that as well?
Yeah, no. I just wanted to share because it's linked. I'm not trying to hog the limelight.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Share. So, in our most successful co-op in banana bark basketry has happened only because of IKEA.
Yeah.
The role that brands, global brands, and let's face it, it's only organized retail and global brands that are going to actually push a change in the system. Individual consumers have much less power compared to what larger brands and organized retail have, right? So IKEA, I tried very hard to build a self-sustaining co-op on B2C orders that the brand Mother Earth I created gave. I couldn't because the order sizes were too small.
Too small, yeah.
So finally, I mean, our relationship with IKEA is 7 years long, and IKEA is a unique company, right? And it's something started by IKEA commercial. It's not IKEA CSR. It's because IKEA's SDG goals, IKEA's sustainable development goals are circular economy and women's empowerment. And the head of sustainability at IKEA corporate has said, what better way to meet those two than increase our natural fiber buy? Let's buy less plastic. Let's buy more natural fibers because they're circular in the circular economy. not circular.
Yeah, we like IKEA. They put their money where their mouth is. Actually, they're among the few.
Get them made by women co-ops because that's inclusive. Yeah.
All right, it's time for our third poll. I'm glad you brought up IKEA. In your view, what is the best way to connect craftspeople to urban consumers and thereby increase their livelihoods? So do we need more IKEAs, giant IKEA type retailers? Do we need thousands of boutique stores? I like buying from small boutique stores myself. I don't like giant retailers. Online marketplaces. Can craft be bought online, or is it a touch and feel product that online really won't work? Or do you think all of the above is what we need? You have 20 seconds to vote. We still have over 500 people in this, attendees in this webinar. That's very impressive that we don't have too many drop-offs even after 45 minutes.
We're not boring enough
We are
yet.
not boring people, that is correct. All right, so the overwhelming answer, 56% says we need all of the above. It's not one or the other. I see the smallest ratio says we need giant IKEA type retailers. Thousands of boutique stores gets the second vote, and online marketplaces third. Right, interesting poll results. Tulika, I'm just going to ask you to react to the poll results. Why do you think people are saying we don't need IKEA type of retailers? Is that because large stores tend to be soulless and small boutiques tend to be quirky and fun?
Well, I think it's because it's the mindset. And not really, IKEA is one of the amazing stores around the world. And also, what I'd like to say is in tune with what everybody was talking about, more organized. So IKEA is more organized, and we need more organization in this sector in India. And that is why I strongly feel, as Leila ji was saying, there's money, but it's very difficult for people to get access to that money. So my recommendation, if the government is willing to hear, is that we need a complete ministry for crafts. It shouldn't be a part of textile ministry. It's a part of MSME. It's a part of textile ministry, has DC handicrafts. So I think there has to be, like we were talking about agriculture and farm and no farm, as Neelamji was saying. But I feel it shouldn't be called no farm. It should be called a craft sector completely, which has a ministry which looks after the needs of the people. It has to be more organized. When we look at census, the census is not complete. It needs a better census. It has to be more organized for us to be able to do better justice to it. And if I go back 300 years, what we see is that, Madras checks was a brand in itself. Then there were calicos and there were shins and so on and so forth. Everything was Indian handcrafted. And we were delivering to the consumers from the West and to the East. We were also giving to Thailand, and, there was Saudagiri textiles, and there was so much Indian craft. I think the time has come that we can develop it, thanks to stalwarts who've brought it up again. Leila ji is sitting here, Neelam ji is here, and Devika, Christine, all of them are here. It started with Popul Jaikar and people like that who realized that we need it. And I think now time has come that we have to make it much more organized and profit seeking. It shouldn't be khadi ne kuch kiya, subsidy diya, to bik raha hai. Wo subsidy nahi chahiye. It has to be that,
stand on its own.
Yes, it has to stand on its own. That here it is, and this is the best, and it has to be for a market. It's not that we produce random products for anybody to buy. It has to be that, this is catered to the East, to the West, to India, to North of India, to South of India, because tastes are different across the country and across the world. So I think that's very, very important. It has to be targeted. It has to be organized. Census has to be done in a proper manner, and a ministry which allocates funds properly to various sectors. And we talk about artisans, we talk about craftspeople, but they are not the only ones suffering. There are small businessmen who are designers. Now, some of the artisans have become designers, and then they have employed people coming from Bihar. Currently from IICD, we are supporting a lot of artisans, and they say, ma'am, we have money to support ourselves. But our, these people who've migrated and who are now working as block printers in our company, they need support. Can you give them food? Can you give them? So the whole thing has changed. It has evolved over so many years. So I think all of that has to be the current situation has to be studied. That has to be kept in mind, and everybody should benefit out of it, because and that will only happen when we organize it, like IKEA does. So that organization has to come in, and from the side of government, it's very important.
Okay, it's time for our last few questions. I'm going to start with Leila again. Leila, is the solution to the craft problem of creating a ministry like Tulika says? What would you like the government to do?
Well, I think there's a lot of debate on that, and some people say that a separate ministry for the craft sector will make the craft sector even more marginalized than it is. And while others feel that no, it would give it more visibility. I think the jury is out on that one. But I do think that there needs to be a complete shift in the government perception of the sector, where they're not looking at it as picturesque, but rather primitive activity, which has to be propped up with subsidies. They need to look at it as a sector of huge, huge potential in the international as well as the national market. And they need to look at it long term instead of these short sops that they give in terms of these little schemes and things. And I mean, even the design and product development, which I think all of us agree is a crucial area if Indian crafts is going to stop looking backwards and look forwards. It has to be that the designers who are sent out on to work with craftspeople need to be briefed. There needs to be a potential buyer at one end, and there needs to be a crafts community at the other who are also expressing their wishes, their potential, their skills. At the moment, it just doesn't. Usually some poor kid is sent off there, doesn't know the A to Z of the craft techniques and technology. They don't know for which markets they're selling. They don't know their price points. They don't know even sometimes their sizes. And the craftspeople think of designers as some sort of magic wand who's going to come and change their lives for them. So I think there has to be a lot more communication. There has to be a lot more planning. And I think in all this, the government has to be the person who is enabling and not actually running. I mean, my first thing would be to shut down those government emporiums and those state handicrafts corporations, because I think they actually make people think that craft is incredibly boring and depressing and too expensive and irrelevant. And I think instead of that, if we could actually have people writing in proposals which make sense, which have business plans, and the government either funds these or doesn't. It's not actually necessary to have the government in it at phase one. I mean, Daskar, for instance, decided some years ago, about 20 years ago, that we wouldn't take government money, and we actually are completely unfunded now. We support ourselves from the revenue we generate. It is possible, but if you're looking at the craft sector in a long-term perspective, which I think we have to, then I think you do need a government which is open, which is flexible, and which is responsive.
All right, it's time for our fourth and final audience poll. Anshu, if you can fire the fourth poll. What is your opinion of government policies and actions in the craft sector? You can take a period of time that you've been alive, or you've been an adult and you've observed the sector. You have four options. Not bad, but they could be doing a lot more. Option 2, very good. Option 3, good intentions, but bad implementation. And option 4 has been a total failure as far as you're concerned. You have 20 seconds to vote. All right, you're going to see the results of the poll. Okay, not bad. We have a fairly optimistic group of people in the audience. Nobody's voted very good. That gets 0% votes. But good intentions, bad implementation, and not bad. Together, about 67% of people think that either they're not bad or they have good intentions, and 33%, that's 1/3, think it has been a total failure. All right, thank you, Anshu. Christian, next question for you. What do you think it will really take for the Indian craft sector to grow at a rate that to create sustainable wealth for the actual producers, the people at the bottom end of the chain who are actually doing all the hard work? Sorry, Christine, you need to unmute.
I keep muting because I have bad internet. So it's going to take a few things. I think quite a lot has actually already been said, interestingly, although in different contexts. Design does play a huge part. I think whether it's from India, whether it's from abroad, there needs to be, good collaboration. I think design schools, and I can see that Tulika is already very clued up as to what's going on. And I think that design schools could play a tremendous role in understanding, in teaching how the craft is working. It's too difficult. It's not my world to say how you would marry it up more than you're already doing. But I think more marrying up, more exposure on both ways for the craftsmen to designers and designers to craftspeople, because that's an obvious one. If that is a good collaboration, then the sky's the limit. And then I think, as Neelam I think mentioned, is some elements of technology, whether it's the not e-commerce, but whether it's working in the virtual space. Why should crafts not be allowed to use some form of technique that makes things a bit quicker? I'm not a purist, so Lila may be slapping me later, but
I'd say exactly the same.
In order for the craft to expand, they need to be able to produce more of that output. So I think a small amount of mechanization, and I realize in India we have very complicated schemes. I was talking to somebody who's on the faculty at NIFT, and he was telling me, he said, but if they do that, then they don't qualify for handicraft, they go in some other sector. And I'm like, does it really matter? If they could just be allowed to do their job. So I think all that mechanization, that investment is essential. Now, how do craftspeople get money? I'm not sufficiently knowledgeable about what the schemes are, but why can't there be, these microfinancing that they can, and then teach them to be entrepreneurs. I mean, you've got all the young generation of people from the craftsmen. Your next generation can be doing all of this, doing stories on Instagram, telling the story of craft. So I think there's huge potential, and it is all to do with modernizing, thinking modern, not just saying craft is stuck. I mean, I loved the idea of blitzing Baba Karak Singh Road and Baba Karak Singh Marg in Delhi, and turning those emporiums into vibrant places. I mean, you do have Kamala there, which I think is a very good example of what craft can look like, which is the Delhi Crafts Council store, which I send everybody to shop there. And I'm like, skip the rest because it's all dusty and tired and boring. And that's not what craft's about. And it's not what the export craft is about. The craft that is being exported is very vibrant and amazing, but there's a lot of work being done by the middleman, and I think the craftspeople themselves could do a huge amount. And it is companies like IKEA. I think in the US there's a company called West Elm, which is working a lot down with the grassroots and interested. So encouraging people like that to come in and work in India will definitely help to expand and grow. And teaching business skills, business accounting, basic training. And I don't know where we are on skill training. There seems to be a lot of talk about it, but when I actually talk to craftspeople, if I'm in a rug weaving area or in a wood carving or wherever, and I say, are your children going to do this job? And they usually say no, and that's very concerning, because who's going to do that job when their children don't do it? So how can we energize that business? Maybe by giving these not so complicated certificates of training, diplomas. In the old days in Britain, where I'm from originally, you could go to college, technical college, and just do a 1-year diploma and learn to be a plumber or an electrician. Why can't we have crafts training like that? And you need a certificate in India. The certificate's really important, but it gives recognition and it gives skill training, and we will have more people who will be able to do it. So I think that's quite important, and just a lot more support in a business way. Support. I like Lila and Neelam. I don't believe the government should be giving handouts. I think we should teach people to fish and feed themselves, because if they do that, then they'll be bigger, better, stronger. And I think there's huge potential, and there's so many people. I mean, if you just take the map of India and stick a pin in it, you're going to find a craft skill or a craft skill. We need to encourage, we need to grow, because when they grow, they'll become stronger and more successful.
Neelam, you wanted to weigh in quickly. We're running a little over time. So I'm going to go to the audience questions after your comment.
I mean, you should see your chat. It's recorded. Please print out the chat and circulate it, right?
I will. We will circulate it.
I would also like to say something quickly.
Yes, Leila, go ahead.
So next time, please poll how many men and how many women in the audience. I'm serious. Okay. My belief, when you've spoken about this assembly line and mass production, whatever. So Jacob is completely, my husband is completely, we need more left brain, right brain, all kinds of people in the sector. Jacob went to Toyota to understand, he went to Japan on a 3-week free training to understand lean production. Because so we use the principles of lean production on the inner co-ops to make it more efficient, like she said. And do you know what lean production is based on? He met the 80-year-old the guys who founded lean production, who founded 6S, who founded the Toyota way of manufacturing. They were all artisans. Jacob came back and said, Neelam, from a Toyota assembly line, there's a blue Innova, then there's a yellow something else, and there's a green something else. The Toyota assembly line doesn't spit out 1,000 blue Innovas. No, it's all customized. That is the whole. So I really think design education has never taught enough about production, manufacturing. So there is. It took me 20 years to find out what a production engineer is. And there's this Indian Institute of production engineering in Bombay. And then I got the interns and I said, take every craft and break up its processes. So there's a lot to this sector. And the last thing I'll say is this sector has to mingle with other sectors.
All right, Leila, quick comment from me before I go into audience questions.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I absolutely agree that we have to improve the technology of craft, not only to make it quicker. I don't think perhaps we need such quick craft, but to make it more acceptable to the people, more less hazardous to their health, more easy for them to do, and more appealing to them as a profession. Because let's not forget that we're losing 15% of our craftspeople every decade. And I think that the drain is going to be even faster now. So to just increase customer awareness of craft or make them want to create markets is not enough unless you have craftspeople who want to join the sector. They're all extremely savvy now. They're much more proficient at WhatsApping and Zoom and all this than most of us are. And they use it a lot. I mean, I've been doing so much design development these last few days on WhatsApp. But I think we need to empower them to use all that, and that craft should be directed now by craftspeople and their potential and their requirements, rather than either by government or by the NGO sector or even by designers.
Tulika, quick comment before we go into
So I just wanted to add that that is why craft education is very, very important. And because as Christine also mentioned just now, that a lot of youngsters don't want to do it, and we've been facing this. So I think it's not important for the child of craftsmen to take up the same thing if he or she doesn't want to, like a doctor or an engineer's son doesn't want to become a doctor or engineer. It's up to them. But we need craft schools to enable other people to become, if they want to get into the line of crafts. And we have good schools in the country, but we need many more. So like my emphasis on Ministry of Crafts is because then we also need to have at least one institute, which is a craft institute in every state of the country. And like at IICT, we invite craftspeople to teach. So they are teachers. They teach, and because what they teach, we cannot teach. None of us can teach. So I think that is very important, that we get them in as faculty. We include their learning, and we build a strong education, like how computer science or something else has come up, like that craft education really needs to be a part in this country. And only then we'll be able to do justice, I feel.
On that note, I'm going to open it up to audience questions. My first question I'm going to ask you, Ayaz Basrai asks, and I'm going to ask Devika to answer this question. This is what differentiates an equitable collaboration between designer and craftsperson, and when does it become glorified slave labor? Tough question. So Devika, if you'd like to take a crack at that. What is a true equitable collaboration?
You're asking the slave drivers, so quite the wrong person.
My goodness. And guess who my mentors?
All right, Devika, the answer.
Okay, the answer is that it is when at least if I say it from my point of view, when I work in a community or with a community, there is no me in the process. I am water. So I go in, I don't have a plan. I have a business plan. I know what we need to achieve in terms of the livelihood, in terms of the earning, in terms of which market to tap and what to do. But I have no idea of what to create. I sit there and I soak up what they create. And very often, like Laila knows, that the stuff that I cook up, say in Ranthambore, is completely new craft, because I work, our task there is to actually generate employment to communities that weren't into craft before. So I would spend a couple of weeks in a village talking to women day after day, and there is really no skill in terms of craft that can be sold. But you know, they braid hair really well. So what can we do with the skill of braiding? And then you sort of plug in the fact that your main center generates a whole lot of chindi, a lot of scrap. And so we braid the scrap, and we think we can make mats and, you know, flat products out of it. The women, for the life of them, cannot make a flat mat out of the braided stuff. So we get these cups, and we sort of think, should we make bowls? Should we make hats? Should we do this? Should we that? And suddenly somebody says, oh, this looks like a turtle. And then we say, oh, great, let's make turtles. And then from that turtle, now the Chindi Animal Brigade is, I think, 30 animals strong. And it's our fastest selling product. And it was no craft. So I was, you know, I don't know at what point there was me and what point it's never been me, and it's been together.
All right.
It's the same thing with the birds that we do now. It's the same thing. So really, there's no slave in the picture. There's no slave in the picture.
All right. Next question. Rajan from Bangalore asks, and I'm going to pose this question to Neelam Chibbar because of your industry experience. So this question is simple, Neelam. He says, why hasn't a craft-focused e-commerce platform taken off in India? Why don't we have a big, giant e-commerce craft player?
Because we don't have supply chains to back it.
Okay.
It's all about supply chain. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's all about supply chain. When the person or the brand or the company based in the US says, move this ikat from hand ikat to screen print ikat. What is that person saying? That the supply chain for hand ikat is not in place. The number of artisans for hand ikat are in place. But the organized supply chain is not in place. And that is actually what Leila is referring to when she says that the government support is needed. Because are these supply chains going to be built by every exporter? Not possible. Okay. Again, I want to call out, government is not going to give you the money to build those supply chains.
Okay.
Not going to come from them. We've got to come up with our own ways of how are we going to build supply chains for scale.
Okay. Next question goes to Leila Tayyabji. Gary from our audience asks, and I think that's something that Christine said you might slap her for saying, is there a danger of serious dilution of the craft form itself when these economies are driven by the export market? When we want more of something and then we are willing to mechanize or dilute the actual craft, at what point does it cease to be the craft itself?
I think the thing is not so much the numbers, because India has the potential to produce craft in numbers, though again, because different crafts are different, there's some where there's a huge potential for multiplication, and there are other crafts which do not have the numbers. But I think they all could deliver. The question is time and the money to buy the raw material to produce it. Usually the exporter, or particularly the e-marketer, is expecting a finished product. He might pay for it quite soon, but he's not going to invest in the process of the production. And sometimes if you want to upscale the numbers, you have to improve the machinery, the equipment, buying raw material. It's really extraordinary how many craftspeople still buy raw material from the mainstream market, because they don't have the capacity to buy in bulk or order in numbers in advance. So all those things have to be streamlined and put into place. And there's where I think this whole investment is required, to create these stable production units from craftspeople who still work as a kind of family activity, sometimes even part-time along with agriculture.
Christine, next question for you. Tanya asks, can you give us an example of a country that has managed their intangible cultural heritage and craft sector very well from a government policy level? Can you think of a country that's done this well?
There's so few countries with crafts, with craft centers. Probably you know, Japan has really I mean, they have this very precious craft there. It's the only country that I'm reasonably familiar with. I don't know Vietnam or Cambodia. I would think countries east of here. Morocco, actually, strangely, Morocco still does seem, I have no idea what the government involvement is, but if you go as a tourist to Morocco, you do see, you know, they have the ceramics, they have the rugs, they have the metalworking. And I did visit one of their metalworking places. So maybe Morocco is managing it, but it's very small scale. And they are, I mean, when somebody wants to buy a bigger scale, they'll come to India. If they want a Moroccan-looking lantern, they'll buy it in India, because I don't think the craftsmen in Marrakesh can provide it. So maybe Japan, but again, you want to buy a lacquer.
Very, very well.
Where?
I was very impressed when I went to Indonesia 2 years ago to see
Possibly. Yeah, that's another country. That's right.
Organized.
Yeah. And I have no visibility on how the government, what government involvement is. Maybe in Indonesia, perhaps you're right, is with between their batik and their wood, they do have a lot of craft.
Okay. Next question for Tulika Gupta. Adarsh asks, what are the rules for marrying crafts and technology so that it's meaningful to the craft?
There are no rules as such, but I think people have to look at them one by one. And the most important thing is that we do not dilute the craft. Mm-hmm. We need tools, we need technology, but we do not have to dilute the craft. The spirit should be there. The motifs are also changing, and things will change. Also, I keep reading about newer technologies that are coming in. And I think, you know how you can do surgery, the doctors can do surgery with use of technology sitting miles away. And I think something like this can also, it's called haptics. And so if there is this one person who's making a beautiful, say, pottery, or he's doing a kind of some interesting work, embroidery or something, which it's not machine made, it's handmade, but the same person can create it faster, you know, and if more demand of similar type comes, because what I see in the West is they want very standardized products. They don't really appreciate a lot of differences in each product. So this way technology can help us, this technology. And of course, all the e-commerce platforms, there is something new that I was studying, but I haven't completed it, but that can really help with payments, because there's a lot of issue about karigars and artisans not getting payments. And if we use that technology, you know, the buyer is bound to pay the supplier. When the karigar puts up his work, and there is a kind of a bill which will go, and then you know, he will have to pay. He cannot not pay. So this way we can use technology, not to mass produce, not at all, but to create similar products by the same person faster, and also to market it, to sell it.
All right. Next question for Neelam from multiple people, actually. So I can't name any one person asking this question. I'm getting a lot of questions that say, I'm a designer, I'm a student, I would like to volunteer, I'd like to spend some time in the craft sector. So for both Neelam and for Devika, is there a platform that can channelize this sort of energy of designers who are maybe doing commercial work, but would like to do a little bit of work in the craft and do a little volunteer time?
ADI.
All right. So join ADI, step number 1.
ADI should be the platform. There's a lot of requests for these things to become monthly. I do something craft focused monthly. I said ADI will do it.
Okay.
There's a lot of requests for online course around.
I think just about.
And I'm asking for weekly online course. It's all in your chat. I'm reading. I'm more in the chat right now. So there's a ton of stuff there. I've even checked how much are they willing to pay per week. One lady has said she'll pay 1,000 rupees per week per session.
Okay.
For 1.5 hours. You see a lot of
things on it.
Yes, you know, we are thinking on these lines of creating these online courses.
Yeah. So right now, I believe ADI should just start with a volunteer thing, start with something, and it's just simple. I think everything happens only when it's forced to happen. You have got at least 50, 100 people like me, Devika, Leila, Tulika, Christina, who will want to give back. you will just start. It's the only way to do this.
Devika, same question to you. If a dozen volunteers came to you, would you be able to deploy them?
Of course, I do it all the time.
Okay, all right. So what
I
is
know
the
that
institutional
Dastakar
mechanism?
would really
Yes,
so
absolutely.
right.
We would love them, but they have to commit to spending some time, because it's not something, the craft sector is not something that you can step into for a week or so. It has to be a little more intense than that.
Okay.
So exactly. So when somebody approaches me and says they want to spend time working in the craft sector, I have a set of rules. And the first thing is commitment.
Yeah.
It's not something that you can plug in and plug out. But even then, if the student says, I have only 2 weeks to do, then I give a task for those 2 weeks. Like, create mood boards, document this technique, get the social survey done. I give tasks like that. It does not always have to be design. And I think even in all the questions, in the entire discussion, I want to bring this back into focus, is that for me, when you look at craft and when you look at design and markets and whatever, it is people before product. Always. And that we cannot forget.
And that philosophically is the most important point there. People before product.
Most important. People first, process next, product last.
Okay. People first, process next, product last. Okay. We're well over time. I'm going to stop it at this point. I'm going to introduce Dhwani Shah. Dhwani is an illustrator and graphic designer, and she's currently working with Tara Books in Chennai. She's joining us from there. Now, she's been quietly taking sketch notes from over this entire webinar. Dhwani, can I request you to turn on your camera and share your screen? And to all panelists, we will be sending you the transcript of this entire chat. All right, so there's sketch number 1.
Yeah, can you see this?
Yes, we can.
Lovely, very nice.
Very nice and very meticulously done.
That's so cute. Very nice.
Yes, a little zooming would also be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in the beginning, and then I was like, okay, running to take notes.
All right.
Great, Dhwani. Lovely.
Very nice.
Very, very nice. Very creative.
And you've got my Devika jacket that I'm wearing, so I'm very happy.
Thank you. So,
Can
I stop the share?
If you have any more sketches, Dhwani, share. Otherwise, you can stop this. You can stop the share. Okay, that was Dhwani Shah sharing her sketches. Darpana, can I request you to switch on your camera again?
Yeah, I'm back.
All right, Darpana, over to you for a small closing note before we end the webinar.
Fabulous, fabulous. What a power-packed session this was. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Suresh, Team ADI, and all you lovely people, the 500 and the 200 on Facebook who joined us today. It was wonderful having all of you here. 2 quick reminders. One, please go to adi.org.in and fill up the National Design Survey. Yeah. And the second thing is, we at ADI have noted all your feedback and suggestions from today. And these talks are just a few things that we at ADI have initiated. There's lots more happening. So please, again, go back to adi.org.in, register, be a member, and stay connected with us for all other sessions too. Stay safe, be well. Thank you so much. Thanks, Suresh.
Thank you. Everybody,
hold on for a second. I'm going to ask Seema Seth and Anju Ajbani. Anshu Ajbani is the community manager for ADI, and Seema Seth is the head of events and activities. Yeah, there's Seema, there's Anshu. Now, these are the two who've been working to make sure this webinar works seamlessly. They've been hounding our panelists to be
Suresh,
Suresh,
can I get one word in Edgeways, that survey that you have sent, which has every design discipline spelt out, including UI, UX, transport, furniture, whatever. There is no thing called craft design.
All right, that's feedback for you, Darpana. To take
Thank you. Yes.
Devika, we will look into that. We will correct that and reissue.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I need everybody to pose for a group photograph. So if you can put on your best smile and just pose for a group photograph and look directly into your cameras.
Ready?
Yes, we are ready.
Have it. Thank you.
All right, final thank you note on behalf of ADI. I'd like to thank all of you panelists, Leila, Tulika, Neelam, Christine, Devika. Thank you, Anshu. Thank you, Darpana, and thank you, Seema. Thank you, Dwani, for the sketches. Most importantly, thank you, members of the audience. We had over 500 people, and as I can see, we are still 427, which is still a pretty healthy number at the end of an hour and a half. I'd like to thank all of you. I'd also like to thank Anantaya Jaipur once again for making this webinar possible. Thank you, Anantaya. We'll see you again soon. Thank you, everybody.